Well, good evening, everyone. Greg has shown the questionable judgment to allow me to host this meeting this evening, so we'll see how it goes. First, if you are not already on mute, please mute your speaker unless you decide you'd like to talk. Tonight's main topic, we're going to talk about filters. But before we get to that, do we have anyone here who has never attended one of these meetings who would like to introduce yourself and sing your college fight song?
Well, I don't know that I want to sing, but this is my first time at one of these meetings.
Welcome, Daryl. Tell us a little bit about your interests and yourself, whatever you care to share.
So I've been slowly collecting equipment for about a year and a half and took my first image last summer and am basically on the shallow end of that steep learning curve, trying to figure out what to do with all the data that I've collected. I did receive both L Synergy and L Extreme filters for Christmas. So I've had about 3 clear nights since then where I could start collecting data with them. And now I'm trying to figure out what to do with it all.
Well, maybe some of that you'll pick up this evening. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Others who are new to this meeting. All right. Couple of announcements before we get underway. Excuse me. We have formed a small team to work on planning a meetup at CAC, about which you were surveyed some weeks ago. Based on CAC's availability, and it's a very busy place in April with a lot of events, we are going to have the meetup on Sunday and Monday nights, April 12th and 13th, and that is comfortably out of the way of spring major religious holidays. There is, unfortunately, a limit on how many people CAC can support. There's, if my recollection is right, there's 2 showers, limited number of toilets. We've got rooms, we've got tenting space, we've got RV hookups, but there's probably going to be an overall limit on how many people we can comfortably handle at the site. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, and we're working with Conrad on that. The approach we're going to follow for reservations and so on is we're going to go back to those people who answered in the survey that they would attend. And we're going to give them a first crack to sign up. Once those, and we have to make sure we have the right number of people in RV and tent and rooms and so on. When that's done, to the extent we still have open spaces, we will have, rather than first come, first served, which puts pressure on people to be available on their computer at a moment that may or may not work for them, we'll do a little lottery where there will be an opportunity to throw your name into a hat, and we will select randomly from the names that are in the hat. So stay tuned for more details on that. We'll be getting back promptly to those of you who have already replied to the survey. The second survey that I wanted to report on quickly, and for this one, I'm going to share my screen. Everybody able to see the blue bars?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So this is a weighted average of the various topics that we put forth. I can't get all of them on this is probably hard to read as it is. Um, but the highlights, the top item, uh, far and away number one was comet imaging. Second one was Greg Ruppel's lessons learned after 10 years of remote imaging. And Greg, happy 10th anniversary for your remote setup. I'll just run through the top 12 so you can hear what they are. Getting started with Nina, getting started with PixInsight, continuum subtraction techniques. My guiding stinks, how do I fix it? Nina plugins you should consider. Processing RGB and LRGB images in PixInsight. Nina's sequencer power-ups. Processing narrowband images in PixInsight. Nina's advanced sequencer, autofocus do's and don'ts. That's the top 12. We don't have speakers for all of those yet. So if you've got expertise on any of these topics, please let Greg or me know, and we'll start matching up people and dates and with these topics and do our best to follow the preferences we have here. Any questions on the CAC meetup or presentation topics?
Jeff, this is Conrad. We have we have 6 toilets and 5 showers.
That's more than I thought. But on
Yeah,
the bright
each
side, you got 10 acres, right?
yeah,
10
yeah.
acres and a little trowel. I'm sorry. Um, anyway, we will certainly work to get as many people there as we possibly can, consistent with the available space. The one other thing I should mention in terms of thinking about being part of that weekend is we're going to ask, as you would normally, we're going to ask everybody, bring your own food. That way you don't have to worry about somebody's allergic to this or that. There will, however, on the, I guess it's the Monday night, the second night, there is a big grill down there. So if you want to bring a hamburger or something else to throw on the grill will be up and running and people will be free to cook for themselves. But we will all be on our own for bringing our food down there. Conrad, Greg, others, Ed, who were on the call last week. Did I miss anything we should mention now?
I think you covered everything.
Okay, cool. Well, with that then, let us stop sharing. And at this point in our meeting, and for Daryl's benefit, we always devote some time to questions of beginners. You've got some folks on the call here, Daryl, others with an awful lot of experience, and then some enthusiastic intermediates and advanced beginners. But if you got a question that you consider to be something that would be primarily of interest to someone who's in their first year, maybe 2 in this hobby, speak up. All right, hearing no questions, let us get into our topic. The topic tonight is filters for one-shot color cameras. And by way of intro, I will say I started with one-shot color, made it as far as an L Pro and an L Extreme filter, and had a good time working with that and learning some narrowband normalization, stuff like that. And then I decided to switch to mono. I read the chat boards. I see Dave Stern seems to buy a new filter about every 60 days, Dave, right? And is doing all kinds of spectacular things with them. Um, so, but I haven't been spending a ton of time paying attention in depth to these subjects because this is not a tool that I'm currently using. But but Dave, maybe you could kick off because this is something you've spent a lot of time thinking about, and just share your overall perspective on how you think about layering filters and taking advantage of filters
Sure,
for
sure.
AISIG.
I'd be happy to do that. I started out about 3 or so years ago in the hobby and didn't know anything about it, as most people do when they get into it. Um, with my C8 Hyperstar, and the filter I started out with was the L Pro. That was part of my kit that I got at Star Arizona, and used that as my light pollution filter. Um, Eventually, I ended up replacing it with the Antlia Tri-Band RGB Ultra filter, because that's designed to be used with imaging trains that have high speeds, F2, F1.9, like the Hyperstar. But it has the advantage of the L Pro. The L Pro is designed for, if you have like I forgot the lighting. It's not LED. It's the sodium type vapors and so forth. But it doesn't. It's an older design filter. It doesn't really handle all the types of light pollution that you have today. So the tri-band is better for that purpose alone, just for light pollution. I live in a Bortle 4.5 area, so there is localized light pollution as well. Even though it's a suburban rural area, if you look at the chart, it says Bortle 4 or 5. But I'm also just adjacent to a elementary school that has their parking lights on a good part of the night. So with that, I was really concerned about it when I started out. But even without a light pollution filter, I can shoot a reflection nebula, like M45 that you see on my screen here. That was done just with the built-in UVIR cut filter with my 2600 MC Pro. But bottom line is, I went with the L Pro. I had some issues with it with it didn't handle all the light sources, plus from a light pollution standpoint. And I had those big globe type, well, forgot the name for that, but that's when you look at a light or something and it kind of takes up part of the screen and it glows. You know what I mean?
Halos.
Halos, correct. Had a halo issue, whereas the tri-band was better at handling those. Then I decided I wanted to make those nice, pretty false color pictures that I do a lot of with emission
Hey, Dave,
nebulas.
before you go on
Sure.
to the next step, tell us a little bit more about the tri-band. What three band is this? I assume it's got a higher rejection proportion compared to the L Pro, but can you describe what that filter does a little bit?
Well, it's also good at bringing in the HA and O3, in an RGB format, so RGB method. So that's my understanding. I'm not really technical on the filter, but I know it's one of the best rated filters out there for light pollution. But I've had some good experiences shooting broadband. It's my go-to filter for broadband. It's not a narrowband filter. Some people think it is, but it really isn't. It's really more of a broadband filter. So anytime during galaxy season where I'm shooting a broadband galaxy and it's not a reflection type object, I'm shooting with the tri-band typically.
Thanks.
Yeah, I get better quality results, better contrast. And for HA, surprisingly, when you have targets like M31, it does a great job of bringing in the HA, although I do shoot with my HA03 narrowband filter, um, and I strip out the HA from that, and then I'll use methods like continuous traction to bring that into the image as well and add some additional HA to it. Um, then from there, I started with my first narrowband filter was the IDAS NBZ UHS filter, because that allows you to isolate the HA and O3. It's got a pretty narrow bandwidth and it's really good for fast optics. So that was basically my only choice and pretty much the one I went with for narrowband. So for a while when I was experimenting with narrowband, I was shooting in the HOO palette using that. And that did a great job. until I decided to go to a longer focal length with the C8. It wouldn't work past f4. So I had to get something that was more optimal for both. And I ended up getting the Para 2 filter from Optolong, which is a great HO3 filter. It works both with fast optics and slower optics, so I can really work with the full range, whether I'm shooting at a longer focal length with the C8 or whether I'm shooting with my SQA 55. It does a great job.
I might interject. I have the IDAS NVZ, though I have the non-fast version of it for my scope. And that, for those who like numbers, has 12 nanometer bandpass for HA and O3.
Right. Yeah. I also forgot to mention that I got the ASCAR D2 filter because that was compatible with my focal lengths, whether the Hyperstar or shooting with my longer focal length with the C8 in the back of the image train. And that completes the picture now. So if I want to do an SHO, I'll shoot a few nights with the HO03 filter, which is the Para 2, and then I'll shoot a few nights with the ASCAR D2, which is the sulfur and O3 filter. And that's about the extent of the filters that I have now. I'm currently doing a project for the California Nebula, and I've gone 2.5 nights because last night half the night was cloudy. I couldn't get some decent images, so I'm going to attempt to shoot some more tonight. But I'm trying to bring out the S2 and more O3, so that's where the ASCAR 2 comes in for that object. And I've already shot 2 nights with the Para 2. I might add an additional night, but the challenge with that object is bringing out a lot of the sulfur emissions, and the D2 does a great job of that.
And Dave, when
Jeff,
you are, go ahead, please.
Jeff, it's Randy. I was just going to offer two more bits of information. I think that tri-band was a little bit marketed as if you were only going to have one filter, it would be one that you
Right.
could use for both nebulas and for galaxies. And so that was one of its strengths rather than having two. And I had one for a while, and someone's logged in twice.
Please, Paul Lorenz, please mute your. Never mind, I can do it.
Okay. We're still. I think he may be logged in twice. Okay, is it working now? Hello.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. My experience with it was I did not think it was quite as good as the straight light pollution filter for those kind of objects, nor did I think it was quite as good as the IDAS NBZ for HA03. So, but if you're going to have one filter, I think it might work well for that. I know Dave's had a lot of success with it. The other thing is on that IDAS NBZ, I found it was the absolute best filter for killing star halos. Even Alnitak, it would handle that star beautifully. And I hadn't found any other of the HA03 filters that would do as well on reducing halos as that one. So that's all.
For Randy and for Dave, others just want to describe their general experiences with OSC filters.
I would.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I use an Optolong L quad. I'm wondering if any of you use that. And it seems to work especially well on both nebulas and galaxies. And let's see, I know it has HA, O3, and I think the hydrogen beta, and there's the wider band at the shorter wavelength there, at the blue. but it seems to be quite effective. And then what I do also is just shoot unfiltered to just kind of to fine tune the color balance. So when we combine, but I usually shoot with 2/3 of the frames filtered and 1/3 unfiltered. And it's given some really, I've gotten some outstanding images that way.
Paul, and then I'd like, hey,
Yes?
hang on here. Gotta mute you again. For all three of you, to what extent do you process your stars? Do you capture separate unfiltered RGB stars and put them in at the end, or you go through one of these pixel math algorithms that convert a narrowband star image into a broadband star image?
This is Dave. I can discuss how I've done it. I've done it both ways. If I don't have any RGB stars, for example, if I have telescope live data and I've downloaded I had some credits for a HSO or SHO image, and that's all I have to work with, then I'll use I was using SETI Astro's tool as at first, and then with the new scripts from Bill Blanche that I demonstrated it last year, that does an excellent job of bringing in your linear stars, which could be the SHO equivalent, and brings it in and it looks at pretty close to an RGB. But whenever I get a chance at home to do my own imaging, I'm always taking out one night to shoot a few hours of RGB. And then I use the scriptlet from Bill Blanchard that takes RGB stars and brings them into the narrowband image. And I've gotten excellent results with that.
Thanks, Dave. Randy, how about you?
I'm a lot lazier about it. I don't worry about it. I may, I'll just go ahead and take the stars out, when it's linear. Then I'll stretch the stars and I'll play with the color till I like them, just with curves. And that's all I do.
Okay. Paul, what about you?
Well, up until now, I haven't been processing them. I haven't had the software available to separate the stars from, like, say, a nebula or a galaxy. I recently purchased Star Exterminator, and I am working on that. I'm just kind of learning to use it. I got one pretty good one pretty good image of the Rosette Nebula. A couple of things that I had problems with, though, when I separate them, and I get some really outstanding images, but when I recombine them by way of pixel math, and I just use star plus starless, put them together, it loses some of the dynamic range and some of the resolution. The images go puffy. The stars kind of, and I thought, hey, what the heck happened here? It's so if somebody could help me.
Hang on. There are some scripts out there. Once you've got both the stars and your image stretched, you'll get a better result, I think, if you screen the stars back on. And Bill Blanchard has a script, SETI Astro has a script, I think Adam Block has one. It's not a complicated formula. They've all taken basically the same formula and then layered it, an interface over the pixel map. But stars plus starless is not going to get you an optimal result, because then you're adding the backgrounds together too.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. See, somebody's got to tell me that. Maybe.
Oops, I'm sorry. I muted you.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I'm just learning to do. So if you just use star plus starless, you won't get, okay, that's good to know. So what
Just
if you
if you
said,
just search online, you'll find plenty of resources.
okay, I'll try and see what I can find.
But give it a go, and if you're stuck, post a message on the chat board, and others can chime in.
Yeah, maybe that's something somebody could help me with. By the way, if I go to that workshop, I'll only be able to make Sunday. I usually work on Mondays, but it's later in the day. But I may be able to go, but I probably won't be able to actually take any images Sunday night. But I'm I'll be there from the week before, and uh, but I'll probably have some data sets that perhaps somebody could help me with.
Well, we hope that we're going to have time for people during the day to chat, to work together, whatever people want to do.
Yeah, well, that's
All
what
right, so let's come back to the subject though of using these filters. The question that we've been rattling around in my mind, particularly for you, Dave, because you're shooting, if I'm hearing you right, two different filters to get your HO and your SO, and then you're stripping the bands out of that and recombining them. That is starting to sound remarkably like a mono setup. You're just using one less filter. So setting aside that there is a significant cost in dumping your color camera and investing in mono, what are you going to do that?
When am I going to go mono?
Yeah, and not to dump the color, but when are you going to add mono to your repertoire?
When I get a faster computer so I can process it. 'Cause right now I'm limping along on an iMac M1, and it only has it was maxed out when I bought this particular model. The highest you could go was 16 gigabytes of memory. So, running WBPP can be a challenge. I've had some times where I've imported data, and I was processing for like 21 hours once for WBPP. I mean, it took that long. But if I'm shooting now that I'm using the AM5N mount, and I'm getting better guiding than I've ever gotten before. It's more consistent, and pretty much been shooting wide field with the SQA55. I've been shooting 300-second exposure, so I have less frames to process
Right.
at a time, which helps. But yeah, first step is get a faster computer. And then once I get to that step, then I'll be looking at getting a mono setup of some sort.
You're using the 2600 on the wide
Yeah.
field?
Yeah, my only concern about going mono is being in a Bortle 4 to 5 site where I also have some localized pollution as well. Um, how that would work when you're shooting narrowband, that's one thing. When you're shooting your SHO, that's a narrowband filter. But if you're shooting
Right.
RG and B, what have you found, Jeff, when you're shooting where you have some light pollution in the area?
But in October, I decided to go after the witch head. And I'm in Oro Valley, so that's low in the sky, deep into the Tucson light dome. Um, on the bright side, if you look at the sensitivity graphs for monofilters compared to an OSC camera, you'll see something interesting. The OSC red overlaps into the green, and the green overlaps into the blue. So with an OSC camera, you are capturing every wavelength of visible, basically a visible light. The R, G, and B filters typically have gaps in between them. And those gaps, if I recall the comment Doug Summers made once, are designed to leave out a couple of frequencies of light that are commonly light pollution. So in theory, you're getting some kind of light pollution effect just from shooting RGB at the price, of course, of giving up some wavelengths of light that you do get with a one-shot color. That said, I took one look at my integrated witch head and played around with gradient removal for a while. It's all there and it looks really nice, but I spent over an hour playing with every gradient removal tool in PixInsight, and I could not get rid of the gradient without creating black artifact somewhere. I'm still I think I'll be able to do it eventually, but that's a long way of saying if you shoot into serious light pollution with RGB, you're going to have added challenges, particularly with lumens, because that, of course, is capturing absolutely everything.
Right. That's my only concern. But I'm in a Bortle 4. It's relatively forgiving, but I think you have, what's your Bortle where you're at?
I'm 5.5, 5.6, according
Not
to
that
the
much of a
latest map.
difference.
I would say with in Oro Valley, if you're looking east over the mountains or to the north, it's a nice dark sky. But as soon as you turn your attention to the south, it starts to brighten up toward the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, so that's my only concern with RGB.
It's
Randy,
not,
how about you?
yeah, it's not been a concern in Saddlebrook out here. I think we're 4.7, 4.8.
Mhm.
But we're not nearly, the Tucson Light Dome isn't nearly as prominent, I think, as it is there in Oro Valley. The other
Yeah, you're
thing,
another 7, 8, 10 miles up the road.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, I've not had any real issues with RGB. And I think, Dave, with all the wrestling you've done with splitting out the different components and recombining them, I think you'll find mono processing is a piece of cake.
Oh yeah.
From what I've seen about the sensitivity of doing all of what you're doing, and it looks to be like it's each object is its own challenge because of its components of the different narrowbands. And I think you'll find mono imaging, the processing, pretty straightforward after what you've done there.
Well, I've been using telescope live data for a few years just so I would learn how to use mono data. That was the whole purpose. So I've been able to learn how to do, the SHO palette with it, and I've also learned how to do LRGB processing with telescope live data as well.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I've been
you're
using
all
it
set.
as a learning
Yeah,
tool.
Yeah.
you just need the authority from your House Appropriations Committee chairman.
Okay, I'll talk to her later on. She's watching the Indiana game right now while I'm at this meeting.
I think the challenge though is when you get into a good set of RGB and SHO filters, you're looking at a lot of money.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. But so far I've done pretty well with the one-shot color. I'm really pleased with the results. I know it'll be a lot easier once I get a filter wheel and the appropriate filters and go from there.
Now, I'll say one little or interesting side effect of mono is you're going to want the 7x2 or a 7 or 8 slot filter wheel instead of a 5,
Right.
and that's bigger. It's heavier. It sticks out more. And if for any reason your telescope balances at a point where the filter wheel does not clear the back of your saddle, you could be limited to less than 180 degrees of rotation. Don't ask me how I know that.
Okay.
You may very well, with your SQA 55, you'll probably have to put that filter wheel where it's in the up position rather than hanging down. At least that's my experience.
Well, and you want it pointing generally, up, left, or right, and not down, so that you minimize the risk to peer collisions. But can we get some others into the conversation? You two cannot, or you three can't be the only people.
Yeah, I have a
using
question.
filters with an OSC. Greg.
I don't do a lot of narrowband imaging. I've done some with a L Extreme filter, and in the past, I've used the SETI Astro NB to RGB to convert the stars, but I found it's kind of a hit and miss operation to get the stars the appropriate brightness and to get the color to look halfway decent. I was wondering if anybody who's done any of those types of mathematical conversions have then run those stars through SPCC or some other color analyzer to make a final adjustment to the star colors.
Great question, Greg.
I use SPCC to set the color ratios.
With narrowband?
Oh, sorry, missed that part.
Well, the question was really if you take a narrowband stars and convert them using pixel math or SETI Astro's little tool, it gets you somewhere close, but I've never been real impressed with the results. And I was wondering if anybody had done that and then applied SPCC or PCC after the fact to make some sort of final correction.
Yeah, I have an image right now that's full of purple stars, and I would love to know how to fix that.
That's
Well,
what you invert, put green SCNR on it and reinvert it, and that will help the purple stars.
I'll give that a shot.
There, I think if you when in doubt, go look online. But there's SETI Astro. Bill Blanchard has a tool. There are a number of different ways of converting. It is an artificial process, and I've had the same experience. I've never been happy, really, Greg, with the conversion. So when I shoot narrowband, I always spend a couple hours, collect RGB, and then I have my stars.
I have a question if I could.
Please.
So my experience is really, my background is more CCD modeling. And as I'm learning to make the shift to the CMOS sensors and one-shot color, the concept of gain is kind of a new thing. We didn't really change the gain back in the CCD days. And so I've been experimenting a little bit with an L para filter and an L enhance filter. Both of those are opto-lung. And then also with no filter. And so I'm just curious from you guys that have quite a lot of experience with the one-shot colors. A couple of questions. One is a color like a UV cut filter critical if you don't want to use any filtering? Because I find that if I have just no filter at all, a lot of times the images seem to have no color at all, and I'm wondering if that's the reason. And then the second question is when you're changing filters, are you also manipulating the gain settings for your cameras? Because I find, that it makes a big difference in the signal as well as the noise. And so I'm just learning how to find the right balance there, but I'm curious when if you go with one filter, do you also change your gain settings, or do you just have a standard gain and offset on your camera?
And your Dave, you want
Yeah, I always leave my gain setting it for my 2600 MC Pro or my 553. I always leave it at 100, which is the Unity gain setting. I never change it.
I never change that.
to, Keith, if you go, you're using a ZWO camera?
Yeah, a couple of different versions of ZWL, the 670 mono, the 585 color, and the 2600 mono. And I guess part of it too is initially I was very resistant to using any gain, so I was setting cameras at 0 gain or 10 or 15, and that kind of goes back to some of my training where, like with doing photometry, you don't want to. You want the signal to be as pure as it can be, and I just have a lot to learn about gain, I think, and learning that it's really not such a bad thing after all.
No, I mean, I'll just chime in a couple of thoughts. One is, if you think about those graphs that appear on ZWO website, when you scroll down for any given camera, the overall well depth shrinks as you raise the gain, right? Because you're lifting it up from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be more likely for a given amount of light to blow out pixels as the gain comes up.
Yeah.
And so that's one argument for going to 0 or a very low gain. I've read in some cameras 0 can be a problem. You actually want it to be a little bit above 0. But if you're using RGB filters versus narrowband, you got a radical difference in the amount of light coming through. And it may well make sense for the narrowband to pick a higher gain level than you do for RGB. What I've always understood is you want your darks to match your lights. So if you're going to use 6 different gains, you're going to need 6 different sets of darks at the same temperature, at the same offset, and so on. So, for me, I've limited it to 2. I'm at 0 for LRGB and 100 for show. And that's just what I seem to get decent results with that. Part of what drives me, I've got a full frame camera, and I'm learning the painful lesson that you buy a full frame camera, you're buying a NAS too, because it really eats up memory fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, I don't want to take 20-minute exposures, because I want to have 45 or 50 frames to maximize SNR in a reasonable time. There's all these countervailing factors that you got to think through and experiment. Who else has played with gain a little bit?
When I was first setting up my camera, I went through a range finding summary, basically doing different readout modes and different gains, and basically took pictures of the sky so I could see what I needed to set to get about the exposure I wanted to use or what I could tolerate. So I didn't want to have to take 15-minute show exposures in order to be sky noise limited. I mean, it's just too much. So very similar to you, I use 0 for RGB, and I use 56 in my case for show. I have a 600M.
When I was doing CCD, it was very common that I would be taking 15-minute subframes in narrowband, and that, the longer I went, the fainter the sharpest object or whatever I was targeting was going to show up better. So that's, I guess and as Jeff points out, if you're taking longer exposures, you're going to have way less frames eating up your disk space, and it's amazing how much you can generate in one single night run.
Yeah, my record's about 75 gigs one night when I decided to go short. Boy, never do that again. And Keith, one other thought popped into my head. Um, on the gain graphs for the ZWO cameras, most of them have around 100, or I think it's around 50 for the QH5. There's a sudden drop um, in the noise level for a given gain. And I think that's, Dave, what you referred to as the unity gain, and that's certainly where I have, where I started with the one-shot color camera.
Yeah. Yep. Well, tonight's run, I've reset my cameras to match those graphs, and hoping that I get better results this evening on whatever.
Other comments and questions about using OSC filters? Now, Randy, Dave, Paul, thanks for sharing your thoughts. I actually do want to reserve a few minutes here. Matthew Ota, you have posted a couple of items in the chat. Would you care to tell us about them?
I'm a big fan of Damian Peach. He's a world-renowned planetary photographer, and he compiled a interesting video lecture about the effect of artificial intelligence on astro image processing, and I found it to be quite interesting. The other thing I found was a chart. I don't know if it's up to date, but it compares software packages for image acquisition and manipulation.
Yeah, let's see if I can. Well, I guess everybody can click on it in the chat.
Yeah, you can right click on it and bookmark it or whatever, watch it later. The other thing I want to say is I've seen trends in astrophotography. I don't know where it's going to go because of all this electronic assisted telescopes, the smart telescopes. They're down to about $500 now, and people just set them up and they're completely robotic. They do all the processing, they do all that, and then they, in other words, I made a opinion statement on cloudy nights that I will never get into that kind of astrophotography. And the reason is, after the first maybe 50 images, you get bored with it because there's no challenge to it anymore, see? And now years ago, when go-to telescopes came out, a lot of people were knocking those, saying it was making it too easy to use a telescope. But I'm sure you would admit today that the advent of go-to technology makes astro imaging easier. So not only is technology moving forward, it's accelerating. And now they have a electronic eyepiece made in Greece. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Oh, it's the Pegasus Astro Eye.
Oh, yes. It's kind of pricey, but I'm sure that there'll be competitors with that. And I see a future with that particular setup for public outreach, But getting back into our topic of astro imaging or astrophotography, it's getting more and more popular. There's many more people into it than when I first got into it back in 2003, I think it was. But it's good because it opens up a market for companies to innovate, and there's many more cameras that we can get compared to like 2002. there, back then there was Finger Lakes and Santa Barbara Instruments Group in Apogee. That's all I even heard of, And now we got all these offshore Chinese companies making these cameras and also harmonic mounts, and they're putting them out like sausages, and it's driving prices down. I can remember when it's a big 6 camera cost $12,000 just for the camera,
Sure.
and it's amazing how far we've come,
Well, Matthew, if you when the iPhone first came out and soared in popularity, everyone was predicting that Nikon and Canon were going to go out of business. Because the best camera is, of course, the one you have with you, and everybody has their iPhone with them. And yet Nikon and Canon at least, Nikon's had some management problems, are thriving. And the iPhone has its place. I think all of us could tell the difference between just about any image taken with an iPhone compared to an image taken with a Canon flagship DSLR.
Right.
And I think there's an analogy to the astronomy world with these smart, easy telescopes. They're like the iPhone. They will attract people who would never in a million years do the kind of stuff that we all do. But they want to make pictures and they get excited about it. Some of those are going to say, you know what? That's a neat picture. I'll bet I could get an even better one with a 55 millimeter telescope on an equatorial mount, or with 130 millimeter, or, up you go, right? And you go sliding down the imaging rabbit hole. I think it's great. Just last week, I was listening to an old podcast. I think was it Alan Dyer, used to be an editor at Astronomy magazine. He told a story similar to yours. In the old days, you sat with your eye at a guide scope and you had your paddle and you were pushing buttons north, south, east, west to keep the star centered. And then when the first auto guider came out, people said, well, this makes it too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank
agree.
Matt for posting that link to Damian Peach's little video. I watched that, and he had some really interesting points. One of the points that he made was the use of generative AI, not just to process an image, but to actually enhance the image. And I would recommend that you all go and watch that video, because it's amazing what happens when you take real images and combine them with your own images. You can get things that are impossible otherwise. And he seemed to make a strong point for that. So it's a very well thought out approach to astro imaging, at least for planetary imaging.
Which video was that?
If you click the chat button at the bottom middle of your screen, you'll open up a chat box. And on the right, you'll see the posting of a Vimeo link.
Yeah, you just right click on it and open it in another window and watch it later after the meeting. Yeah.
Alan Rockowitz, you just posted something from Cloudbreak Optics. Tell us. Oh, gain and offset. Here, there's another link to right-click and open in browser for later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just catching up. Sorry about my jumping in I'm on my laptop and it died, of course, in the middle of the meeting. So this was a little explanation on Cloudbreak Optics website about gain and offset. So back to our discussion on one-shot color cameras. So if you read this gain and offset explanation, I think it will become crystal clear how it all works. It'll bring
Is
it
there
all
a
into
link to
focus.
that?
Yeah, it's right above there.
Oh, okay, got it.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to step on you. What were you saying?
No, not at all. Thanks for chiming. We're in the open discussion phase of the meeting. So, what else is on people's minds?
I'm just wondering while I'm here if we should have a separate group for PixInsight and a separate one for Nina, since you had laid out all your topics. What do you think?
Well,
Let us know.
unpack that a little more.
It just seems like we could devote a lot of time to talking about PixInsight and techniques and how-tos. And I feel like making it a part of this would just steal the thunder away from this.
So you suggesting maybe separate sessions
Yeah.
where we can go deeper on some of those topics?
Yeah, processing techniques. We have a couple of experts like Dave and Randy that could probably talk for hours on PixInsight alone. And since everybody, it seems like, including me, are using Nina, maybe we should talk about that separately also, just because we could fill hours and hours talking about how-tos and the best ways to do things and stuff like that.
And when you think of all the videos out there on Nina from Patriot Astro and Quiv,
That's
just to
true.
name two, there's it's endless.
I agree. Well, there are equal number of videos on PixInsight, but none of them are interactive. You can't ask questions, right? I mean, there are a million ways to quote unquote skin a cat, right? So you could do the same, you could achieve about the same results in, let's say, PixInsight 10 different ways, but I personally find that I learn a lot by asking questions and how do you do this? Oh, that's much better than the way I do it. Stuff like that. So just
Okay. I've,
something to think about.
I've written down the idea.
Okay. That's all I ask.
Okay.
Okay, I'll mute.
Other thoughts, challenges, problems, successes, dogs chewing on octopus toys. You're mute out there.
I
Very
got
good.
a question. I got a
This was
question.
all delay.
Last year, I acquired an 8-inch Celestron CPC HD Deluxe telescope. I bought it on a fork mount because I intend to do public outreach with it. And I recently purchased the Super Wedge in anticipation of getting into astroimaging eventually. The question is there a camera that can do it all as far as hooking it up to Hyperstar and also hooking it up to the prime focus on the other side? I don't want to have to go out and buy 2 or 3 different kinds of cameras.
Well, that's a Dave Stern question because he's done exactly what you're asking.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I have
Both ends of a C8.
I have the C8. It came as a kit with the AVX mount. So I had the C8. That's what I started with the intention of doing the same thing. I started with the Hyperstar. And then after a year of doing that, then I ended up buying and I had my 533 MC Pro camera eventually. I also have the 2600 MC Pro, both the same pixel size, just a matter of, the size of the sensor. But in any case, I ended up doing a lot of research on it, and I bought an off-axis guider. I bought the I think it was the ASCAR. No, actually, no, I bought the ASCAR off-axis guider. I also bought the Celestron, the Star Arizona SCT reducer with the field flattener, and it also took care of the coma as well.
I have one of those too.
Coma correction. So that's very good for that particular scope. That's what I needed.
Right.
And I ended up Well, I ended up getting I bought the 174 guide camera knowing that eventually I would need it for the 1450 focal length, which I do when I go long with the back of the scope. So that's done extremely well. Where a lot of people screw up is they get like the 120 or something, and then they have trouble. Um, once you find the stars, you're good, but the problem is finding the star, and that's where people get stuck. So the 174 provides a lot more capabilities in terms of sensitivity for finding the stars when you want to start your guiding with the OAG. But what I liked about the ASCAR OAG is it had a helical focuser uh, built into it, so that it was very easy to work with, and it fit the size of my C8 extremely well as well. So that's what I've been doing.
Okay, I'll toss you an email and you can give me, if you could, give me that information.
Sure.
I have a 69-year-old brain and I have a hard
Well,
time
so do
remembering,
I.
I have a hard time remembering numbers, you know.
It is a little on the young side, Matt. This crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyways, I enjoy attending these meetings. There's always something new to learn. And as technology marches forward, I kind of joke about it. Someday we'll all have robot servants that'll do all that trench work for us, you know.
Well, but then, like you say, it won't be any fun. The robot will say, "Hey, how do you like the new mosaic of
Yeah.
16 panel mosaic of M31?" Yeah, that's nice. I'm going back to the football game.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone who contributed to the conversation this evening. Interesting and varied. We will meet again on the third Monday of February. I'm not going to hazard a guess as to when exactly that is, but
That's February the 16th, President's Day.
So we go from King Day to President. We're keeping on the holidays, correct?
All right. I just want to mention too, those of you who'd like to submit images to the bulletin, you can send those to me, or you can private email me and say, feel free to use anything that I post on the TAA forum. That way I know that if you post it, I can put it in the bulletin. So again, if you have images you'd like to share with the TAA membership, they need to be something less than 10 megabytes. And David Rossiter has asked that if you could include some details with your images. Some folks put an image up and there's no details, and it's so difficult for people looking at the bulletin to know how exactly did you get this image. So if you could put add some details when you submit your image, such as the telescope, the camera, total exposures, stuff like that, that would be very helpful. If you post it to a portal or a web page, you can include that, and that will then show up in the bulletin. So if somebody wants to track it down further on Astrobin or someplace else, that will be available to them as well. So please keep sending in those images.
Yeah, you've just answered one of the questions I've had about that, which was I posted one image just straight in a message, another one on Astrobin, and I wasn't sure what was preferred.
Either way, but Astrobin sometimes, leaves out important information, and sometimes they have more information than you really need. For the bulletin, I usually like to include things like the telescope used, the camera used, the total exposure time, and any other details that you feel might be useful for someone looking at the image in the bulletin.
I would say those three things plus any filters you used. What mount you used is probably less important. We got to remember that there's about 35 of us, and half of whom attend any given meeting, but there's 770 or 780 members in the TAAA who are not down the rabbit hole the way we are. So the target audience of the bulletin is the broad membership of the organization. So keep that in mind as you put in any description that goes along with your images. But keep them coming because people do love them.
Yeah, I've written articles for the bulletin. I think I published one a couple months ago about John Fraunhofer, the guy that invented the German equatorial mount.
That was
And,
that was an interesting article.
yeah, I thoroughly researched that. Yeah, amazing person.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and clear skies all. And we'll see you next month.
See ya.